about which Pokemon are endangered and which Pokemon are safe. So basically, no one ever talks about which Pokemon can be endangered. Technically, no Pokemon are endangered as there are an infinite amount of every Pokemon, as it's a video game. But we'll be going off based on how rare they are, how small of a habitat they are, and how often they're caught and used as a delicacy or something else. First, we'll be starting with the stars. We'll be doing the final evolutions. First is Venusaur and all of its previous evolutions. And none of the games, with the exception of a few accidental introductions, Bulbasaur has never been found into the wild. Yes, Bulbasaur has never been found in the wild. The only way these Pokemon can be gotten then are by the professors. Which means the only way, with the exception of Brilliant Silent Giant Pearl, which that doesn't really count as well. Also, they are into the only time to see in the wild at any Pokemon game. Also invasive species do exist in Pokemon. So basically, the Pokemon is mostly extinct in the wild. There is no wild Venusaurs, Bulbasaurs, and Ivysaurs in the wild outside of the hidden treasure of Area Zero, and they're likely introduced there. So, extinct in the wild, you go. Go. The same thing can apply to Charizard. So, Charizard is one of the most popular Pokemon out there, and we'll be judging it based off its pre-evolution, and of course we're assuming basically where its pre-evolutions are found, its evolutions are found too. So basically, just like with Bulbasaur, you cannot really find them outside of them being introduced to increase the biodiversity, or basically being introduced. And let's go Pikachu and Eevee. Salamanders and Charizards can actually be found in the wild. But they are a very rare encounter. I'm going to be putting them as endangered because of how rare they're still found. But they're much more common than Venusaur is. But we excluding Let's Go. And also the probably were introduced by the professor. So Charizard and its evolution line compared to Venusaur and Bulbasaur. We're going to look at Bulbasaur again as well. And they can be found in Viridian Forest, but they were probably introduced there as well. Well, we don't know if they're thriving or not. They're actually, I think they're pretty rare. But also Charizard, you can actually literally find Charizard flying around in Kanto, which makes it different. I'm going to put him as endangered because of how hard it is to find a Charizard in those games. Next is the Blastoise. Which is the next Pokemon on the list. Blastoise can also be found in various water routes, alongside with its pre-evolutions, Route 24, Route 25, and Seafoam Islands as well. This is mostly because of how weird Let's Go is. But if we're looking at the original games, which I think we should also really look at the original games, is Let's Go is an alternate timeline as well. Actually, that means it'll knock down Charizard to extinct and wild and Blastoise, because I forgot Let's Go is in a completely different timeline than the other games as well. Also, Charmander is a gift. Also, I think Charmander is a gift Pokemon. And even then, its goal is a well spawn as well. I think that they're really extinct in the wild. All three have been introduced into Galar as invasive species. No, not Galar. All of them have been introduced into the treasures of Area Zero, but I would consider them introduced and not native, as they have been introduced to the area. Next is Butterfree. Butterfree is very common, and no, we're not using the version exclusive as, it's extinct in the other game. They're likely found in both games. Game Freak just wanted to walk the Pokemon behind a paywall, but Butterfree and its pre-evolutions are so common in Pokemon Red and Blue They're also pretty common in Zen and Zoto, which is again right next to Kanto as well. They have been they have also been introduced into several other regions, including Black and White, to in the hidden Pinwheel Force and the Hidden Grotto, but they're extremely rare and likely are lower numbers after their introduction as well. Also found in Sun and Moon and also Sun and Moon, likely introduced to the islands because humans think they're cute. And they're also really common in Galar as well. I would put Butterfree as least concern. Next is Beedrill. Beedrill is basically the same case as Butterfree. I'm going to put Beedrill in its pre-evolutions as least concern. There is no concern for Beedrills going extinct anytime soon. Next is Pidgeot, or Pidgey, because he can't really, in the earlier games, you can't really find Pidgeys. And Pidgeys are basically like the pigeons of Pokemon. They're very common, okay, as well. So Pidgeot and its pre-evolutions are very common in Gen 1 and 2. They're also really, really common in other games. They're not really found in many other games, actually. They're found in X and Y and Routes 2 and 3. Likely were introduced, as they're not really too common throughout the region, which means they're most likely native to Kanto and Johto, which they're extremely common in. Which they also been introduced to Route 229 as well as a Swarm and Sinnoh. I'll put them as least concern as they're very common to be found in various regions as well. So Pidgeot will be listed as least concern as their appearances in Kanto are very common. Next is Rattata and Raticate. Do I really have to explain this one? They're literal regional. They have been really been introduced to Aurora and really create a regional form that is considered invasive. But we'll go over it anyways. So basically because the rats are found in a lot of like urban areas, they're native to Kanto and Johto obviously, but they have been introduced to various areas including some of that one island. I actually do not know what the island is called in Sinnoh, but that one island in Sinnoh where they found routes 225 and 226 want to eradicate. They have also been introduced to Castelia as well, and Relic Passage, which means they're invasive in those areas. They have also been, of course, noticeably introduced into Aurora region. They have been introduced into no other regions. So basically, they're native to Kanto. They were introduced to parts of Sinnoh, and of course, notably introduced to Aloha. They will be considered as least concern, given the very common nature, given them being very common in the home region. Next is Spearow and Fearow. So Fearow, and Spearow, let's see how common they are in the games. So the native region is Kanto as well, and they are found in a decent amount of routes. Routes 3, 4, 9, 10, 11, 16, 17, 18, 22, and 23, and also they're pretty common in Johto as well, which puts them as least concern. And yeah, for Kanto Pokemon, we'll be counting Johto as well as added to their native range, as Kanto and Johto are already connected to each other. They're also found and introduced into Sinnoh on the post-game routes of 225 and 226. They have also been introduced most likely to the Aloha region, as they likely are not native to the region and have been introduced to the region as well. Kind of like with Rattata and Raticate, and of course, Young Goose and Gumshoos, as they're not really found in any other later regions, which means most likely they have been introduced to the Aloha region. But either way, the animal is listed as least concern, as it is a very common Pokemon to be found in Kanto and Johto, which is its native range. Next is Ekans and Arbok. Ekans and Arbok are very iconic Pokemon from the anime, obviously, but how common are they in their native regions? Well, this Pokemon is a version exclusive, but they are still found in quite a bit of routes. Routes 8, 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 23. And they're also found, we're going to be using Crystal as this example, in routes 3, 4, 42, and 33. And 42, which was introduced later on. as well. And also they're found in headbutt trees, which means they might be found in more places in trees. And in later games, well, they're found in Route 212 if you have the Fire Red thing, that doesn't really count. As well, also they're found in Safari Zone as well. And they have been introduced to Route 2 of Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, likely introduced to that region as well. Also they're found in Route 14 and a Horde counter, which means they are probably pretty well in Kalos, but they probably were introduced to that region, and they were introduced, and they're found commonly in the area treasure of Area 0. I'll put Albach and Ekans because of how widespread they are found throughout Zoto and Kanto, as we is concerned. Also, they're found in the hidden area treasure of Area 0, which makes them pretty common. Pikachu, do I have to explain this one? Pikachu is Reed's concerned. Pikachu is found in basically every region. They've been introduced to every... Pikachu has basically become introduced to every region. I wouldn't be surprised in the actual games themselves, Pikachu is seen as a pest. Kind of like actual mice are, as people do not like mice. But Pikachu is the mascot of the series. Pikachu is in no risk of going extinct anytime soon. As likely, Pikachu is a domesticated mouse. Which means it is pretty well in the wild, but because of its domestication and introduction to so many places, and it's commonly found in so many provinces and areas in the world, and the Pokemon world, well, the only area where it's really absent from is the 5th generation area. But in every other game, Pikachu is found very common as well. Pikachu before that was pretty well. It was only found in the power plant and Viridian Forest as well. Well, and it was also found in Route 2 and Generation 2. Likely also Viridian Forest, but they forgot to add it into Viridian Forest. And also they're found at the power plant as well. So Pikachu is mostly found around human settlements in the first couple of games, or in like trophy collections and Safari zones. But why am I listing Pikachu as Reed's concerned? It is because Pikachu is considered a pet by many people, including Ash Ketchum, and it's even given away as the starter Pokemon. Yeah, I'm not using the word first partner Pokemon. The Pikachu as a starter is even used as some places as a starter Pokemon or as a partner Pokemon, which makes it a very common Pokemon to find, especially in. And actually, I think Pikachu might not even be native to Kanto. There's a likely chance that Pikachu actually might be native to areas like Galar and might have been introduced to Kanto, as it's very more common in both Galar and Kalos, and of course the newest region, which is based around Spain, Paldea. They're much more common in those 3 regions, which makes me believe that basically Pikachu is actually native to those regions, and people import them, and a few got into the wild around Viridian City in the power plant, which is why they're pretty common now. They're not really native to Kanto, and they're not even found in Johto. I think that Pikachu is really native to another area. Yeah, most likely, and were introduced to Kanto, given the scarcity and popularity amongst Pikachu, and how they're much more common in other regions, and various regions have been kept in like Safari zones or private collections, so people can get Pikachus, basically, essentially. Next is Sandshrew and Sandslash. Sandshrew and Sandslash are, 2 Pokemon that are in Kanto, obviously. I think these Pokemon are actually native to Kanto, unlike Pikachu. And are they in any danger of going extinct? Well, in the Johto variety, they might be in danger of going extinct, but in Kanto, they're found in a decent amount of routes. They're also decently common. Kanto's terrain is pretty strange, as it's mostly like plain terrain as well. I wouldn't really think it is not really mostly a suitable habitat for a creature that lives in the desert. Assuming they've also been introduced to, obviously, other regions, including, for the first time, Hoenn. They have been introduced to the desert resort and Relic Cows between Black and White 2, establishing a breeding population, and they have been introduced to Aloha, and they have adapted for the colder climates because of competition then as well. Also, they have been introduced to the Pokemon Sword and Shield expansion pass and the hidden treasures of Area Zero. I would consider these Pokemon near threatened. Why? Because there are much rarer Pokemon in the original region, and several subpopulations are pretty rare and pretty restricted in terms of range. So now I have the Nidos. We'll just be counting them as the Nidos because they're basically before gender. They want to create a male and female Pokemon, but they're mostly found in the same areas. So in the original Pokemon games, the Nidos are found in Route 22 and the Savali Zone. That is actually not pretty good. But they're also found in the Savali Zone, which is basically a preserve for exotic Pokemon, which makes me think that they're introduced to the area. So are they more common in any of the Pokemon games? Well, they're also found in the Johto region as well, in Routes 45 and 46. And not very common in any other games. I would actually quit the Nidos as endangered. This makes sense because real-life rhinoceroses are often killed for the horns, which means there's probably a very small amount of areas these animals can really thrive in besides the Savali Zone, basically, or the small routes in Johto, or in places like the National Park, which is basically a protected land. This makes a lot of sense because these Pokemon are basically only found in preserves or in very small areas as well. There are multiple common in Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, but again, those games are alternate timeline as well. Also, they are found in the expansive pass of Sword and Shield, like we were introduced there and not native to that area. Like we were introduced basically for trophy hunting or something like that, and they were just became pretty common now. So at least there are some places where the Nidos are thriving. Now it's Clefable and Clefairy. The thing with Clefable is these Pokemon, we cannot really assess them. So the Pokemon is not evaluated because it is confirmed by the Pokédex that Clefable is not from here. Yes, it is confirmed by the games themselves that Clefable is from space. Yes. That Clefable is from space. I think if one of them says this, but I remember, or it might be as Manila effect, that Pokemon, that this is a... Okay, it says that Pokemon is well, but I've always assumed, or it must be the anime that says this. But Clefable, well, okay, we're not going to use the anime. All of it says about the moon and how rare it is. They're found in Mount Moon and they're pretty rare in that area. I think they're pretty elusive. But they're also found in places like the Trophy Garden, which means the Pokemon is pretty rare. I think unlike Pikachu, the Pokemon is pretty rare. It has been introduced to... It was more common, back in the day. But I think because of human settlement, Clefable will be listed as endangered. And is likely pretty rare. Rare as well, as Clefable is pretty hard to find. Even and especially in its original region in Mount Moon, it probably has a very small range, as there's a lot of Pokemon trainers, and it's probably tried to stay away from Pokemon ranges, which reduces its habitat even more. Next is Vulpix and Ninetales. Vulpix and Ninetales are introduced in Pokemon Generation 1. As well. Again, they might not even be native to Kanto, obviously. As well, they're version exclusives and are mostly found around the Pokemon Mountain in Route 7 and 8. That is not a very great range, but it's likely a chance they've been introduced there, so it's either more common in other games. They're also found in Route 7, 8, 36, and 37 in Johto. They're also found in Mount Pyre, as well as Abundant Shrine, and they have been found in the Tapu Village and the northern areas years in colder climates. And I think where they're really from is from Galar, because they're very common in Galar. I think that they're introduced into Kanto from Galar, well, as they're so common in Galar that they're found in so many areas. Yes. They've also been found in the Eden area 0, very common there too, as well. Which means likely the Pokemon was described in Kanto first. Meanwhile, it is much more common in other regions, as I'm assuming that the Pokédex really started in Kanto with Professor Oak, which means the Pokemon that he discovered or saw in Kanto were the Pokemon he assessed in the Pokédex. Doesn't mean the Pokemon are native to that region, and it's likely Vulpix, like with Pikachu, are not native to Kanto and were just introduced by earlier humans. Actually, it's confirmed by Pokemon Legends Arceus that really, that game really started the Pokedex, that Arceus gave the idea to the Pokemon trainers in that game, the Pokedex. Next is Jigglypuff. Oh yeah, the next Pokemon will be really easy. We'll be using Crobat, as that's the final evolution, but first we'll get over Jigglypuff. Ugh. My least favorite Smash Bros. Character, and Jigglypuff's only found one route. Also, they're a bit more common in Johto, which means there must be some protection plans that are basically expanding the population of Jigglypuff and Wigglytuff, which is very good for the Pokemon community. Also, they found Route 115 in Generation 3. They also found the Trophy Garden, which must mean the Pokemon is pretty well. Unlike Pikachu, which is very common in very rare regions, as it was probably introduced because Pikachu is often seen as a pet. Jigglypuff is also found in Route 14, Route 12 in Dreamyard, Route 20 in Generation 6, and they're also found in Galar. I would consider Jigglypuff and Wigglytuff as vulnerable, as their range, I think, is recovering because the Johto games occur afterwards. Well, let's get this one out of the way. Crobat. Least concern. Do I even need to explain why Crobat is least concern? You know the memes. In every cave, every step you take, you see a Zubat. Okay, Zubats are in no danger of going extinct. Okay, Zubats and Golbats are in no danger of going extinct, as well as basically just the generic cave Pokemon. I think they're native to both Johto and Kanto, obviously, but I think they because of how common they are, they've likely been introduced to various regions or even native in various regions, as Zubats are very common in Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 4, Gen 3 games, and basically all caves. The Fonda Castelia sewers likely introduced by humans, Connecting Cave likely introduced by humans, Sun and Moon likely introduced by humans, Sword and Shield and Scout and Violet are the only games that don't really feature Zubat, besides the expansive pass for Sword and Shield. But in the first 4 generations in Aloha, Zubats are extremely common in basically most caves and routes at night. There is no reason Crobat is endangered at all. Next is Vileplume, and also Bellossom. We're using Vileplume. Artis is also a very common Pokemon in various regions, alongside Gloom. These Pokemon are very common in various regions, and there is no doubt they're pretty common in Kanto, pretty common a bit common in Johto and the more forested regions. They're pretty common in Hoenn. They're pretty common they're introduced to the One Island and Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. They're also really common in Galar as well. This is a pretty common Pokemon. I think that Vileplume and Bellossom are not in danger of going extinct anytime soon. Next Pokemon is Paras and Parasect as well. Parasect is, of course, the weird parasite Pokemon. How common is it, though? Well, in the original game, it's only found in Safari Zone and Mount Moon, which obviously I think I'm considering all Safari Zone Pokemon to be imported, But Mount Moon must mean they must have been introduced to Mount Moon as a non-native Pokemon. It is very likely that they brought them in through the Safari Zone, someone caught a couple of them and introduced them to Mount Moon. Also, Cerulean Cave also has Parasect as well, which has been introduced there as well. I forgot about that as well. They also found the National Park Ilex Forest as well. Likely were introduced there as basically like, oh, we need more biodiversity in the park. There isn't just Beedrills, Pidgeys, and Butterfrees. And of course Sunkern as well. They're also found in the Great Marsh after at least obtained the National Pokedex as well. But I think this Pokemon has been basically disappeared. They were very common in Residence Arceus in various areas. This might be a Pokemon that might have disappeared because of habitat loss. You also have to realize the places of the Great Martian National Park can also be seen as preserves. Which means, I'm rethinking my assessment of Parasect. This might be the first Pokemon that might be actually critically endangered. They're restricted to a very small area in their home lanes if they're not imported. If they're not imported, then we don't know what the true region is from. There might be a region where they're very, very common. But at least, as of now, they're critically endangered. They're very close at extinction into the wild. Besides a few protected areas of the Safari Zone or Mount Moon or Ilex Forest, there's probably also a protected area or a place like Cerulean Cave, which is very hard to access. Basically, they're in small ranges, and also they're also found in Sun and Moon as well, likely were introduced there by humans. Means or likely there's a regional species found in that area, and that will also be counted as well. But they're not really, like, considering how much more common they were in Residence Arceus, I think habitat loss and also people just catching them really killed or erased the Parasect population, because habitat loss is a pretty bad thing. Venonat and Venomoth are also, I think are also found in the Safari Zone. These are Pokemon that have been basically neglected by Game Freak, but they are found in routes 13, 14, 15, and 12, likely mean that they probably introduced to the Safari Zone, and because they're basically moths, they spread outside of Safari Zone. They're also found in routes 24, 25, and 43, and they're very common in Crystal, which I think takes place after the Gen 2 games as well. But they're not very common in many other regions. I think they're really native to Kanto, and maybe they might be found in those regions, and they might have just established themselves in the Safari Zone. Again, I think they're also spreading in the Johto region, as shown by how common they are in Crystal, and how much they have spread. And also, I think they kind of neglected the original locations in the original games, which is routes 2, 12, 13, 14, 15. There was no way they went extinct in those routes. But considering how well they are found across the games, I believe you're seeing Venomoth as near threatened. Sorry, Venomoth. Hopefully Game Freak gives you attention in the future. Next is Diglett, and this will be the last Pokemon we'll be assessing in this video. So Diglett, of course, is the Pokemon known for having the Alolan form, which could be considered its own species, or its own subpopulation that's adapted to it. Of course, Diglett is infamously found only in Diglett's cave. Which means Diglett is probably pretty well because Digletts mostly live underground. You only find them there because moles are actually pretty common and widespread, because they don't like to show themselves. And also in Diglett's cave, they're extremely common. Like, extremely common. The only thing you ever really see in Diglett's cave is Digletts, too. That's all we really see. Also in Hot Gold Soul Silver, they also found Route 48 as well, which is a new route as well. Also, they're pretty common in Aloha as the Aloha form. So, the Alolan form is pretty common in Aloha as well, in various tunnels and caves. Also, the plant found pretty well in Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet. Pretty common in those areas. I think Diglett. I think Diglett and Dugtrio are pretty common. And that wraps it up for Kanto Pokemon being endangered. I think the really one that's really endangered is Parasect because of Game Freak rejected of Parasect. And that's it about this video here. Goodbye.